Welcome to Talks in Class. I am Jenna. Thank you so much for joining me on this weekly journey through time. I hope everyone has had a great week. It's been a good week over here. Nice, productive, somewhat normal feeling week. And then this past Sunday night, we went to a concert. We went to see Bush in Hollywood. It was fun, and as you can expect, the crowd was mostly elder millennials and Gen X, we'll say, which makes sense. I assume that the audience of this podcast knows who Bush is, but just in case there's like a stray Gen Z listening or something, they are a 90s band whose lead singer was once married to Gwen Stefani. I think that's how I would describe them to somebody younger, I guess. But anyway, they have been around for a long time. They're a 90s band, and my husband has been a huge Bush fan for years and years. I think I'm just maybe a touch too young to have really gotten into them during the height of the 90s, but I definitely remember a lot of their later 90s stuff, and that stuff really takes me back to that time. It has this very specific Y2K sound to it. But anyway, I was excited to go to this concert. And this is the second time I've seen them, actually. My husband has seen them a bunch of times, probably more than anybody else that he's seen. But he was telling me that his first time seeing Bush live at a concert was in 1997. And I don't know what about that struck me, but I thought, wow, we are old, really. 1997 feels like a really long time ago. And the fact that we were old enough to be at a concert, I mean, I'm younger than him, but still. Like I said, most of the audience was my age or a little bit older, but there were a handful of younger people there. And by a handful, I mean really maybe five, maybe six if we're pushing it. There were 2 or 3 small groups of younger people, like Gen Zs there. So there were these 2 girls that were near us, and they were younger, probably Gen Z, very cute. And one of them had a digital camera, like an actual digital camera. And she was just living the dream, rocking out to music, taking like grainy videos of Gavin with her little point and shoot digital camera that reminds me of the one that I used to shove into my Coach wristlet and drag out with me to every single party and event in college. I don't know if you guys have heard about this yet, but apparently Gen Z is very into flip phones and I guess also digital cameras now. From my understanding, they like to take flip phones out with them when they go out for the night to help them be more present, more in the moment, I guess, and avoid like problematic behavior, which I assume just means Snapchatting people that they don't want to. And so, I mean, you could still text if I guess they'd have to know how to T9. But anyway, they think that the flip phone is the way to go for a night out, which I fully support. If that's the way that they are approaching kind of unplugging, I'm all for it. There's probably easier ways, but you know what? If a Razr phone gets the job done, great. And I guess the digital camera is the same idea. Is it? I mean, I guess if you don't have your iPhone, you have to use a digital camera for that, just like we did. But I think from my understanding, again, I'm very confused about all of this, but I think they're also into some quality of the grainy, lower quality, digital camera flip phone photos. They actually like that. Look, before all of my fellow millennials freak out about this, I don't think that we can really judge, because lest we forget, our generation had this weird obsession with Polaroids, or at least a lot of the people that I knew did. I actually have a Polaroid iZone camera sitting on the shelf right behind me. I was obsessed with that thing. So this is probably how our parents felt when we all wanted Polaroids. They were probably like, well, why don't you just use a regular film camera that has better quality photos? I don't know. Anyway, the point is, this is nothing new, but it's just another example of how we're now the older generation. Instead of the younger one trying to bring back these older technologies, these are now our The things that we used to think were cutting edge, they're bringing back as vintage. But I really did love seeing these young girls there and having a great time. They were with somebody who is older, probably closer to, my age or my husband's age, but it was great. It was fun. They looked like they were having a good time. We were having a good time. It was fun. So in addition to that, I'll start with my what good happened for the week. This was a really good week, actually. So I feel like so much good happened this week. It was just one of those weeks where things were happening, things were getting done. I had a couple of exciting kind of milestones related to my work, some good meetings. I got my blue check on Instagram, which is always exciting for a content creator. And we finally got furniture for our little patio at our apartment. Our East Coast place obviously didn't have outdoor space because it's not really a thing in the New York City area. So being able to just go outside, and now we have chairs, we can sit, it's very exciting to me. So it's been a really good week. I've also been having a lot of fun conversations with people about just different memories and nostalgic things. And one thing that always comes up is how obsessed we all were with AOL and instant messaging in the late 90s and 2000s. So I thought this deserves a deeper dive on the podcast. So this week, we're going back to the early days of the internet when the most important social interactions happened on Instant Messenger. Before we get into hilariously bad screen names that we all chose in the 90s, I do want to give a shout out to my clothing rental subscription service, Jenna Barclay Style Box. I don't know about you guys, but around this time of year, kind of this dead of the winter time, I always get really, really bored with my closet. Winter at this point just kind of seems endless. And I know I don't need to buy any more sweaters or any more jackets or any more jeans, but I'm just sick of the ones that I've been wearing already for months. So I just need some variety. So I've been using the Style Box a lot recently to just add variety without having to, buy extra sweaters and extra jackets and extra jeans, because I do kind of stick to the basics when it's cold out. And with Valentine's Day coming up, it's also obviously a great way to rent an outfit for a special occasion or an event without having to feel bad about only wearing it once, because you could just send it back after you wear it. Some of my favorite pieces that I've rented recently are a really cute oversized pink button-down shirt that's nice now that I'm in LA and winter's a little bit warmer, and this really great pair of raw hem flare leg jeans that I actually ended up buying because I just couldn't send them back. They were really, really good. So if your wardrobe could use a little mixing up, a little variety, and you want to give it a try, your first month is always free. No code or anything needed for that. Just head to jennabarclaystylebox.com, click Get Started, and that free month will automatically begin for you so you can try it out and see how it works for you. There's no contract, no obligation, so you can try it totally risk-free. So, on to the internet. When I think about topics that I want to cover on this podcast, they often come from two places. The first is conversations that I'm having with you guys, or they come from just things that stand out in my mind as very central to my experience during a certain time period, in this case, the 90s and early 2000s. And the culture of AOL or AIM really falls into both of those categories. AOL was so central to my experience in the early days of the internet. It's almost hard to describe to somebody now because it's just so different. In the 90s, when the internet started to take off and more people had home computers and internet connections at home, AOL was an actual internet service provider, meaning that AOL was the service that connected you to the internet. But it was also a brand name and kind of a branded experience in itself. So imagine if the way that your device connected to the internet was through TikTok or through Instagram or through YouTube. Like, that's kind of how it was. Like if our entire internet experience was just through one app, that's how it was. And that's such a small little piece of what the internet obviously is. But to me in, 1997 or whatever year it was, that's what I thought the internet was. But really it was just the AOL homepage. So when you went online, which was a thing in itself, unlike now where we're just always connected, we're always online. In those days, we had to click something on our giant desktop computer, and the modem in our computer would literally dial up the internet through a wired connection that went into the wall in our house. It was like making a phone call. Either you're on the phone with someone or you're not. That's how the internet was. You dialed up to connect, like your computer called the internet. And then when you were done, you logged off or like hung up from the internet. There was a set beginning and a set end. It was an activity. We would say, "What are you doing?" I'm going online. That was your activity. You were going online. So when you would log onto the internet, if you had AOL as your internet service provider, you would land then on the AOL home screen. And then it would say, "You've got mail." It wasn't like you opened up an internet browser. You opened AOL. That was your gateway to the internet. And AOL had all of these important features that you could only access if you had AOL. So they had email, obviously, and then they had AOL specific chat rooms that you could only go into if you had AOL. They had AOL keywords, which was kind of like searching for something and landing on a website, but the AOL version. So if you typed in AOL keyword Mary-Kate and Ashley, it would take you to the Mary-Kate and Ashley page. And this is how we utilized the internet. This is how we interacted with the internet in my day when I was a child and a tween. And then, of course, there was the holy grail of AOL, which was instant messaging, which is a DM basically, or a text, like texting before texting was a thing, but you had to be hardwired into the wall. And being on AOL in the evening was the most important thing in the universe at the time, because everything went down on AOL Instant Messenger after school. Your friends would IM your crush to find out who he likes, and then they'd IM you and all your friends, and you talk about it, or you could create a group message, which was essentially just a group chat, but on AOL with all of your friends, and you could debrief everything that happened at school that day in painful, excruciating detail, which is what we did. It was all very important. But I cannot stress this enough. It was not as easily accessible in those days as everything is now. Like the hurdles that we had to jump to go online were significant. First of all, in those early days, you had to have AOL. A little while later, we got AOL Instant Messenger, which you could download and then use on any browser. But back in the day, you had to have actual AOL. Second of all, being online meant that you were tying up the phone line because dial-up internet used the phone line. If you were really lucky, your family had a second phone line for the internet, but for most of us, we only had one phone line, which meant that we were at risk constantly of getting kicked offline mid-conversation, mid-Spice Girls image search. If somebody called our house, it would kick you offline. Or if your parents needed the phone and then they would make you get offline so they could call somebody. I was an only child and lived just with my mom, so I was lucky in this regard because there was just less demand for the phone. But when I tell you, these were high-stakes situations. We lived in fear of an important phone call interrupting our precious AOL time. And then, of course, there was probably the most important AOL thing, which was choosing a screen name. Your screen name was crucial in those days because obviously it was your username that identified you across all of AOL and later all of the internet when we had AOL Instant Messenger. But more importantly, your screen name was your personality. I mean, really, it was the thing that had to tell everybody who you were and what you were about. It couldn't be just like Jenna 1987. That's way too boring. That's not descriptive. It does not tell anybody, what you're into and who you are. It needed to incorporate your interests, your hobbies, maybe even some hobbies that you wish you had but you've never actually done. Surfing was a big one that falls into this category. I don't know what it was, but we loved to make screen names with like surfer or surf chick, some sort of surfing references in them, even though I lived in Wisconsin. Where was I surfing? Lake Michigan, the Mississippi River. I have literally never surfed in my life. Why did I think that my screen name in 7th grade should be Surfer Chick 1987? I don't know. The heyday of actual AOL, not AIM, but AOL itself, for me personally was probably around 6th grade, which would have been 1998 or so. And I remember so specifically that not one, but 2 boys in my class had Stone Cold as their screen name, as in the wrestler. You guys remember these days? So one of their screen names was Stone Cold 25, some other numbers, and the other was Stone Cold 26, some other numbers. It was probably exactly the same, except for 25 and 26, because their birthdays were 25 and 26. But other than that, it was the exact same screen name. So as you can imagine, this was very confusing and very risky. It presented a huge amount of risk, because if you were talking to one of them, if you were going to IM one of them, you had to be so careful that you didn't accidentally instant message Chris to tell him who had a crush on Chris this week when you meant to IM Matt to talk about Chris. It was very, very serious stuff going down on AOL in 1998. We also loved to incorporate brands that we thought were cool into our screen names. The most common of these that I remember was Roxy. I don't know what it is about Roxy that had our AOL screen names in a chokehold, but a lot of Roxy Surfer Girl type screen names, or, Roxy Surf 1987. Again, with the surf stuff, I don't know what was wrong with us, but we all thought we were surfers or skaters or snowboarders. Speaking of snowboarders, Burton was another one that popped up in many a screen name. Quicksilver also graced several screen names back in those days. Anything that they sold at PacSun, basically, we would use it in a screen name. And then Abercrombie, of course, a little bit later, definitely after the LFO song Summer Girls came out in 1999, suddenly a lot of Abercrombie mentions in screen names. A while back, I asked people on Instagram what their screen names were back in the day, their first screen name or their favorite screen name or whatever. So many of the responses had Abercrombie or like Fitch Chick, or I think one was Aberbetch or something like that. But so many people incorporated Abercrombie and Fitch in some way into their screen names. Back in the day, we really needed to have the world understand our commitment to our favorite brands and our favorite stores. I mean, we were unknowingly very great and free advertising for all of these brands all over AOL and AOL Instant Messenger. And then, of course, my favorite aspect of the screen names were just the random words that I think we just thought sounded cool that we would tack onto our screen name, or we would create a screen name that was just a hodgepodge of these random words that we thought were cool. Angel is probably the most commonly used one of these words, or hot, or maybe sexy if you were a little older at that time or going through a rebellious phase, or both. And then, of course, there was girl, or girl with a U, or girl with several R's or several I's, or both, or chick, or the worst was chick spelled without the K, which we thought just looked cool and different, but really is a completely different word and is pronounced chic, not chick. So we were running around AOL chat rooms in 1999 with screen names like Snowboarder Chic 1988. And let's not forget the random extra letters tacked on to the end of the screen names. XX was a big one. Either the screen name would be bookended by XX, so it would be like XX Angel Baby 47 XX. Did we know what that meant, or did we just think it looked cool? I'm really unsure where that came from, but a lot of people did that. Where were our parents when we were creating these screen names? Or we would just add a bunch of extra letters onto a word. So instead of Surfer Girl, it was Surfer Girl or Surfer Girl or adding a Z on the end of something, especially if it was a nickname. So I had a screen name probably around 1999 or 2000 that was Jens with a Z, because my screen name couldn't be just Jen or Jenna. That's boring. But Jens with a Z sounded like a cool nickname. So that was acceptable to use as a screen name. And then there was the devastation of thinking that you had come up with the most perfect, most original, most on-brand screen name imaginable, only to realize that someone already had it and you could not have it. So our solution to that was just to throw like your soccer number or maybe your birthday on the end. And that's of course how we ended up with 2 stone cold screen names in my tiny 6th grade class in my tiny Wisconsin town. So, to recap the late 90s internet thus far to this point, first, we had to convince our parents to buy a giant desktop computer, probably a Gateway that came in one of those cow print boxes, for like thousands of dollars, by the way, because this was the 90s. Then we had to convince them to sign up not just for internet, but for AOL, which was also expensive. If they wouldn't sign up for AOL, you'd have to hope that all the magazines that your family subscribed to, because they definitely subscribed to actual paper magazines that came in the mail, you would have to hope that they came with those AOL trial CD-ROMs in them that would give you a certain number of free hours of AOL until it would just kick you off because your trial was over. Or you could get them from places like Best Buy and just hoard them to use the free hours or free minutes. So you had to somehow get on AOL. Then you had to choose the perfect screen name. Once you secured, sexy surfer chic XX 1987 as your AOL screen name, you were ready. So you'd sign on to AOL on the family computer and it would say, "You've got mail." And you'd click on the little email icon, super excited to see what was in there. And it was almost always a chain email that was in your AOL inbox. There were 2 types of chain emails in the 90s that I remember. The first was the classic chain email that just said something like, forward this to 10 people, otherwise your crush will fall in love with your best friend. So you just forward it to more people, something like that. And then the second one was the fun kind. This version had some sort of survey or questions about you that you would copy paste into a new email and then add your answers, and then you'd send it out to your friends. We would spend hours on these. But before you sent it, you had to customize the entire email. First, it had to be Comic Sans. I swear, everything that we did on the internet in those days was Comic Sans. That was the font of an entire decade of internet activity, was Comic Sans. It was the only choice. So it had to be Comic Sans. Then you had to change the background of the actual body of the email to an obnoxiously bright color. I was partial to hot pink or lime green myself, and if that wasn't assaulting enough on the eyeballs, you then had to change the text color to a contrasting but also very bright and obnoxious color. So I liked a lime green background with hot pink or bright blue text. Imagine reading an email with a lime green background and hot pink text. It looked like a neon Comic Sans watermelon. And that's how I was sending out my chain emails. I also liked a hot pink background with yellow text. I thought that was very cute. And this is probably why I have such poor eyesight now. Once you had the perfect color combination for your email, you'd send the chain email out to everybody you knew, which was just the other, 6 people in your class that had AOL. And then you'd exit your email and you'd go to the buddy list. The buddy list was the hub of excitement on AOL. That's where you could see who was online at any given time. I think you could divide the buddy list up into different categories if you wanted to. I never did that, but basically it was just a list of who was online and available to instant message at any given time. Because again, we weren't always connected. So if somebody was online, it meant that they were, in those days, physically connected to the internet through the phone that was connected into the wall, and most likely sitting in front of their computer, ready to chat with you. So obviously, the first thing that you were looking at when you looked at that buddy list was whether or not your crush was online. And if they weren't online, you would just try to wait it out as long as you could until your mom kicked you off the internet because she needed to call, the neighbor down the street to talk about who was bringing what to the soccer game on Saturday morning. So you just chat with your best friends, or you'd go into the Dawson's Creek chat room and just kind of lurk and watch what people were talking about, or whatever you could find to do until you heard the sound. Millennials know this sound. It's burned into our brains, into our psyches forever and ever. The sign-on sound on AOL. When someone would sign on, AOL would make this noise. It was like a loud creaking door opening. And when they signed off, you'd hear the door slam. And these noises were really loud. But it would make the sound for everybody who would sign on or off. So every time you would hear that creaking door, you'd quick look at your buddy list, just hoping that it was that one person that you really wanted to talk to. But looking back, I think the funniest part about this whole production, this whole song and dance that we all participated in, is that even if that person did sign on, 95% of the time, we didn't actually message them. I mean, actually double click on their screen name and type sup. No, we were not that brave. So instead, we would just sit there and hope that they would message us first, which they also very rarely, if ever, actually did. Or if you were kind of brave, you would tell your best friend to IM them. And then most likely, if one or the other did actually IM the other, you would just make small talk for like 2 minutes about homework or what you were watching on TV or something equally uninteresting before one person would say, GTG, my mom needs the phone, or G2G, which was abbreviation for got to go, because someone's mom always needed the phone. But this is how we spent our evenings in the 90s. Probably with, Bug Juice or Rugrats and Doug playing on the big tube TV in the background on the other side of the family computer room. It was a special time. And then just a couple years later, AOL Instant Messenger became kind of more mainstream. It became available, and then everybody was on it because you could use that on any browser. So suddenly it went from this small pool of people that had actual AOL to your entire class was on AOL Instant Messenger. For me, this happened definitely by late middle school. Everybody kind of switched over to AIM, and I don't think a lot of people were using regular AOL anymore, but we could all IM each other because we all had it. I think this was probably partially because AOL was just really expensive, but I feel like I personally switched over to AIM because I thought it was cooler. Everything changed around this time. One, a lot of people could get on AIM that didn't have AOL previously. And two, a lot of families started getting second phone lines for the internet. And then a couple years after that, we got non-dial-up internet, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. When the second phone lines came into play, this was crucial because we were no longer tying up the family phone line, which meant we could just stay online always, all the time, which of course led to probably the most important development in the history of millennial internet experience until the introduction of MySpace, which was the away message. Man, the away message era was something else. You had to be there. It really was a special time in our lives. And for me, at least, it went on for a long time. I remember posting away messages on my my AIM. Are we calling it AIM or are we calling it AIM? On my AIM until at least early college, so 2005, 2006-ish, at least until we decided that we were on board with the idea of Facebook status updates, we used away messages. So the original idea of an away message was very simple. It was basically an out-of-office message for your AIM profile, your AIM screen name. It would pop up whenever somebody would IM you as an auto response to tell them that you were away from your computer, right? Very simple. But you could customize this away message, and it evolved over time into kind of like a billboard to advertise and communicate with basically everybody on your buddy list, anybody who was friends with you or could see you, by the most passive means possible. Because not a single one of our away messages was direct. We were not literal communicators back in those days. We weren't saying, I'm at the mall with Jessica. It had to be very covert because that made us feel cool. So instead of saying, I'm at the mall with Jessica because you were at the mall with Jessica, you'd say, out with Jess, come find us, winky face. Or my personal favorite, hit the cell. It makes my skin crawl to think of the number of times I typed hit the cell or cells on on my away message. But this was the way of telling people, essentially, I am out doing something cool. I'm not going to tell you what it is because it is so cool. I can't even post it on the internet. But if you're cool enough to know my cell phone number, which obviously everybody knew because I went to school in a town with less people that live in my apartment complex now, then you can call me and find out what kind of cool, fun activity me and my friends are doing now. But then, of course, there is the pinnacle of away message content, which, of course, were the song lyrics. Song lyrics were the cornerstone of away messages because they could passive-aggressively communicate any mood. Anything that you wanted to communicate could be done through a song lyric posted on your away message. If you were excited because your crush let you borrow his sweatshirt in algebra, you threw some love song lyrics up there. Or if you were furious because you found out your ex-boyfriend is now dating one of your people you thought were friends, ex-friends, you threw some emo song lyrics up there. If you and your girls were going out on a Friday night, 50 Cent in the club was always a standby. I mean, there were just so many songs and so little time. The song lyrics were multi-purpose. And we swore by this. This is how we communicated pretty much everything that we were doing, feeling, or thinking for a solid decade, I would say. So, in honor of the AIM years and the iconic away message, I'm going to wrap this up by giving you my top 5 songs that were so often quoted on away messages in the 2000s. And these are in no particular order. I try to put them in order, but really they're all equal in my book. So let's get into it. Number 5, You're So Last Summer by Taking Back Sunday. This is an away message classic. Specifically the line, if I'm just bad news, then you're a liar. Oh, cuts so deep, This was ideal for any shady behavior by anybody, but especially a best friend or a boyfriend. This was good for a fight. This was great for a breakup. Really, any Taking Back Sunday lyrics were excellent away message options, but for some reason, this one just stands out in my mind. Number 4, sticking with the emo trend, Sugar We're Going Down by Fall Out Boy. Again, a specific line that stands out to me is, I'm just a notch in your bedpost, but you're just a line in a song. Wow, what a burn. This was your way to tell a guy that screwed you over that you were so over him. Number 3 is In the Club by 50 Cent. This was a great one because it worked for many occasions. A birthday, 50 Cent. A party, 50 Cent. Pretending like we were going somewhere cool, like a club, when really we were just going to drink warm beer in someone's garage. I mean, this worked for all of those occasions. Number 2 is Two Step by Dave Matthews Band. Specifically the lyric, celebrate we will because life is short but sweet for certain. Just saying that transports me back in time. I don't know. This was for when you wanted to be deep, I guess, but this was also maybe just for a party, like you were going out. This was just a good random throw it up there away message because I think this is an important thing to note as well. The away message song lyric didn't necessarily have to communicate anything. Sometimes we didn't really have anything to say that was of note, so we just needed a good, generic, good time lyric to throw up there. This was the one. And then number one, this is actually probably one of my most used, which is embarrassing. The Ignition remix by R. Kelly, and of course, I mean the lyric, "It's the freaking weekend, baby. I'm about to have me some fun." If you didn't use this on your away message at some point in the 2000s, you're lying. That's it. I just don't believe you. Speaking of these songs, I do have a playlist on Spotify that is called Lyrics for Your Away Message or something like that. And it is from a previous poll that I did where everybody told me their favorite song to quote on their away message back in the day. So if you want to listen to all of these and be transported back to the times when you put song lyrics on your away message, that is there for you. As always, thank you so much for joining me this week. This was a really fun conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend who might also enjoy it. That means so much to me. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and of course, subscribe. I will be back next week. Next week, I'm talking about boy bands and the TRL days. So I will see you then. Bye.